Hi, my name is Dr. Felucia. I'm a licensed psychologist and owner of Skill Set Counseling, where I focus on the treatment of OCD, spiritual abuse, and cultural abuse. And in today's video, I'm going to be talking specifically about how flattery is used as a means of creating an environment for abuse, specifically psychological abuse, and even more specifically, spiritual abuse to happen. So basically, this video is going to examine the relationship between flattery, psychological, and spiritual abuse, and also gaslighting, which is something that I talk about in some of my other videos. And so I'm going to start off by, first of all, talking about what flattery is. And, there are probably many different definitions out there, but I look at flattery as something that is a way of somebody, I guess, giving you praise that is unearned or false. And they're doing that with the intent to manipulate you. Right. And so it's really important to understand the intent behind flattery, because sometimes people are going to be in situations where, maybe someone doesn't know very much about them and they say, oh, I think you're the best at this, or just giving some, praise that to the other person might feel excessive, but it's not necessarily flattery. And so I think that's really important to remember the intent behind flattery. And when the flattery can be used as a form of gaslighting. And I talk about gaslighting in a lot of my other videos, but basically so I watch those to understand more about gaslighting. But basically, when gaslighting occurs, you doubt your own reality, right? You doubt your capacity to reason well and to just see and name what is going on in front of you accurately. And people who engage in psychological abuse, spiritual abuse, manipulation, use flattery as a way of gaslighting. So I'm going to explain how that works. If you think about any kind of spiritual environment, there are usually a lot of people, or a significant amount of people. It's not just one person interacting with somebody else, right? And so when you think about a spiritual environment and how flattery is used, you'll see flattery being given to somebody in front of a lot of people, right? Or in a public setting. And so when that happens, what it does is it kind of sets up the stage for the person giving the flattery to gain some kind of control. I also talk about this in my videos that the spiritual abuse and other types of psychological abuse tend to operate more strongly when there is a power differential. I don't think it always has to be there, but I found through my work that there almost always is some kind of power differential, whether it's a real power differential or it's perceived. That's what is occurring, and that's what is making the environment or the situation, a perfect storm for abuse to happen. And so when we think about flattery and somebody giving somebody flattery in front of other people, flattering them in a group. And the flattery just doesn't have to be verbal praise. It could be things like giving them maybe like a position or a title that really kind of seems excessive or inappropriate for for the level that person is in at that time, or the relationship between those two people, right? So maybe just like quickly making them like the head of some committee, or basically being pulled into this abusive person's inner circle rather quickly. That also can be a form of love bombing. I talk about that in one of my other videos about love bombing and spiritual abuse. But basically, this flattery is happening in front of everyone. It's excessive. It's made to be a big deal, right? But that is the abuser's way of getting power. I'm going to explain how that occurs. Before I do so, if you haven't already, please take a moment to like the video, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and share it. And what that does is just gets this information out to similar others who could benefit from watching it. So if you haven't taken a minute, if you haven't done so, please take a minute to do so, and also remember to comment too at the end. But yeah, I talk about how the flatterer, the abuser, is trying to get power. And the reason how how this power happens is, let me give a hypothetical situation. So let's say there are two people. There's there's a leader, and then this leader is really flattering somebody else, right? We'll call the leader Bob, and we will call the person who's part of this group Mary, right? So Bob is, flattering Mary. Bob is saying how much Mary is the best at everything, and just really pouring it on in front of everybody to Mary. And so as this happens, let's say there's something that happened that Mary didn't feel comfortable with, or maybe she has a suggestion to Bob about how to do something better, or she's critical, or she does anything that Bob doesn't like. What will end up happening, and this is a scenario I've heard so many times, is that Bob will begin to freeze Mary out, right? Instead of Bob saying like, look, just Bob and Mary having a conversation about what he didn't like, he'll say, oh, that's fine. I appreciate the feedback, but then act strange towards Mary, right? And it could be taking a little longer to return correspondence, before maybe he would, reply to emails quickly, or he would just be more responsive and be communicative. But now he's pretty much giving her the cold shoulder, right? And I call this, and other people probably referred to it in this way, but like freezing out somebody. And so now maybe Mary's not invited to certain meetings. He probably is saying some things about her behind her back, and so now other people are kind of giving Mary the cold shoulder and not interacting with her the way they used to. And so when we think about it from a gaslighting perspective, it's going to be very strange to Mary, because in public, Bob seems like her biggest fan, right? But then in private, there are things that are going on that just feel like maybe she can't put her finger on it, but she feels like, why am I just being ignored all of a sudden? Or why do I feel like I've done something and I don't know what it is, right? And so when that gaslighting occurs, that causing you to doubt what you see, that is exactly what's going on with Mary, right? She's probably doubting, well, was this flattery? She probably wouldn't know it was flattery at the time, but maybe she might say like, well, all the nice things he said about me, were they true? Am I just imagining that that I'm being left out of certain things or being treated differently? And so when you're in the process of gaslighting, or when you're being gaslit like that, it really erodes at you, and it can really mess with your self-confidence. People who are on the receiving end of this will oftentimes say that that they just doubt themselves a lot. They don't know what to believe. And so that was what happens in this type of situation. And then, when someone is just operating in that constant mode of being insecure and just doubting themselves and doubting their their reality, then they're going to be in a position that makes them very vulnerable. And a lot of times you'll see this where this person is doing a lot of things to get back into this person's good graces, that is, gaslighting them and is freezing them out. And so that's where that power differential comes in, right? Because maybe there wasn't, a big power differential before, or maybe there wasn't even one that existed, but because the person who is doing the flattery and is now withdrawing their attention, because they're behaving this way, the person on the receiving end is now scrambling to restore what was there before. And so when that person is scrambling, when they're vulnerable, when they're trying to get back in this person's good graces, that puts them in a position of weakness, right? And the person who's doing the flattery, they're in the position of strength. Therefore, this power differential is being created. And so it's really important to understand that that flattery can be pretty insidious, and it can create situations where psychological abuse and spiritual abuse or other types of abuse are more likely to happen. It's a very manipulative way of interacting with somebody, and so this is why when I talk about this in some of my other videos, like getting back into a particular, let's say you've been away from a spiritual environment, you want to get back. It's really important to understand and discern and see how people operate with one another. If you're in a situation or a position where there's just a lot of flattery and it just seems odd to you, it just feels icky, or you just feel like it's fake and it's strange, that's a warning sign for you. It's a red light for you to to pay attention. And so again, I'm just going to review the concept I talked about, is that flattery is a form of manipulation, right? And praising people's fine, even though maybe the praise may be, you might think it's a little excessive or inaccurate. That's not always flattery. Flattery is always done with the intention to manipulate, right? And when these situations happen, when the person who's doing the flattering, they can feel like they're owed something. And so when they're upset, they can freeze the other person out, right? They're pretty much like a two-faced person. They'll be kind and and responsive, enthusiastic in public, but then behind closed doors, they are acting in ways that just show you that they're on the outs with you, right? And so because of this conflict, you see one face and then you see a different face, you start to doubt yourself a lot. And that's something I would just encourage you to, get help for it, and to be aware of it so that you're not doing it, because you doubt yourself. You doubt, well, am I really seeing what is going on in front of me accurately, right? And that's where the gaslighting occurs. Even in situations I've, heard about situations where somebody will say, oh, the person who's on the receiving end of the gaslighting will just maybe bring up something to a friend and say, the way so-and-so is interacting with me just feels so strange. I feel like I'm being, given the cold shoulder. And that other person will say, oh, well, they're so nice to you in public. I saw them hugging you. I saw them saying all these nice things about you. And that just goes on to create even more doubt for yourself, because their public face is very different from their private behavior. Okay, and so we talk about the gaslighting and then the abuse, and the abuse happens because there's now a power differential that's been created. You are put in the position of feeling insecure, feeling vulnerable, feeling like I need to do what I need to do to get back in this person's good graces and restore the, the equilibrium. But when you are in that position, the other person has basically created this power differential, and then in their attempt to get you to, or to get you to kind of get back in their good graces, they're being manipulative and they're being abusive. And so again, this is just a video to help you understand how flattery can lead to psychological abuse and other just unhealthy and manipulative ways of social interaction. So if you found this information helpful, like, comment, and subscribe. If you'd like to book a free consultation with me, go to my website, skillsetcounseling.com, click on the consultation, free consultation button, and there's also a link in the description box. And I'd love to hear from you in the comments. Have you experienced anything like this? Have you been on the receiving end of some flattery that you felt was just, it didn't sit right with you? And then did you later, end up feeling like you were gaslit, and were there some, manipulation and toxic ways of relating in there? Anyway, if you can relate to this experience, I'd love to hear from you in the comment section about that, and tips that maybe you can share with other people. So thank you for watching, and I hope you have a wonderful day that is filled with peace. Bye-bye.